Welcome back to yet another episode of the CGA Tour Podcast. As always, here I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander. And on tonight's episode of the podcast, for the first part here, we've got Cameron from Utah Man Podcast, from @UtahMan. Wherever you find him, big Utah fan, in fact, lifelong Utah Ute fan. So Cameron, how's it going?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. This is a big week, big game week, right?
Big game week for sure. I just got confirmed today I'm going to the game. So
that's sick, dude. I'm jealous. That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
No, thanks. Yeah, actually, I work in Stillwater every day, so or I should say 4 days of the week. So it's awesome to go up for one time but not make it for work. So it should be a great game here. And Oklahoma State's currently favored, but do want to ask you here, right off the bat, I guess, how's Cam Rising doing? Is he going to play in this game? Have any limitations at all that you're thinking about?
Yeah, so I think he will play. Just to kind of recap, in their Baylor game a week ago, he got thrown into a Gatorade stand, had an injury to his hand, kind of through the rumor mill, kind of social media talk. He dislocated a finger on his throwing hand. And then there's also rumors that he had to get a few stitches on it as well, which makes sense because if you saw him on the sideline right after, there was some blood on a towel that he had around it. I really think this past week, their game against Utah State, if it was a conference game, he would have played. So that's why I think there's a lot of confidence that he is going to go. He did dress for the Utah State game. So I don't know if they thought maybe if things got way too out of hand, they'd throw him in there. But he didn't play at all. With limitations, he had a glove on during the game and warm-ups, what people were saying. He had that glove on his throwing hand. But we'll see. I think with quarterbacks, right, that grip on that ball is everything. So we'll see if it kind of changes his throwing motion there.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really curious to see him play because I one side of the family is a bunch of UCLA fans, so I've seen Cam Rising play a couple of times, once against UCLA, and always look up to him as like a guy who can definitely be a game manager type of guy who just grinds out games. But over the past 4 or 5 seasons or whatever, it seems like he's been in college for just as long as Bowman. But over the past couple seasons, how has his game evolved? What kind of quarterback is he today? Has it changed since he started out his career?
Oh, it's night and day different. When he started, I think being in a system for so long, and I'm sure Oklahoma State fans can attest to this. With a quarterback, when you have that many years in the system, you just know it inside and out. And seasons that he was out, he was up in the booth a lot of the time, sitting with the OC during the game, getting that one-on-one attention, like, oh, we're calling this for this reason, we're calling that for that reason. So I think mentally, his game has evolved the most. I think physically, he's always been able to throw the ball well. Right? I mean, he was highly recruited kid out of high school, first went to Texas before transferring to Utah. So definitely always had the physical talent to do it. But I think over the last few years that he's been healthy and playing, you can see that mental shift, really commanding that offense. And you look at games like USC when they're down, guys just buy into Cam as a leader. When he holds that huddle, he gets those guys accountable. There's a different feel with this team. When he went out and a true freshman went in, you could just feel the energy just drop. And I think that's the biggest thing Cam brings to the team is that confidence and that energy.
Yeah, I hope we don't see too much of it as OSU fans here and Boone Pickens this weekend. But I have to say, I mean, a guy who's got seventh year in college, he's beaten ranked teams previously, even at their own place. I mean, has lost to a couple too. I'm not saying that Cam Rising's the next best thing no one's heard of, but he definitely is a very good quarterback. What do you think about as far as his throwing, with his hand maybe, a little bit not perfect, as well as Utah's just style of play? Do you think you guys will be really worried about, hey, we'll be able to run the ball effectively because that'll open up the passing game? Or how do you usually go about winning games? I guess what's your identity as a team on offense?
Yeah, so definitely a Kyle Whittingham team is pound the ball. He's a defensive coach. He wants his defense to win games. He's That's kind of been the joke in the Pac-12 is every single year Utah would have a new OC because they get kind of run out of town. I think with Kyle, he likes to control the ball, or excuse me, control the clock. He doesn't want to put the ball in harm's way at all. And so he likes to kind of play like a 50-50 between the pass and the run, but Kyle loves him a run game. Don't get me wrong. It's kind of shifted a little bit with Cam. But I think Utah still, they're a smash mouth, run the ball at you as hard as they can. Now, the hard part is this year, they haven't really been able to do that effectively as they have in the past. They've really relied on their throw game. And we saw that in Utah State this past week. They couldn't run the ball. Well, they couldn't do anything to start the game, but their running was not good. And it was that passing attack that really opened the run game for them, I think. And so I think against Oklahoma State, they're going to try to establish that run. But really, I think Utah's offense, just where their talent is, it's in a passing attack offense.
Gotcha. Is that why you think that Utah State game was so close? Just that Rising didn't play, of course, and that the running game wasn't off to a great start?
Oh, yeah. Well, and to kind of set the stage there, so this is Utah's first time going to Logan, to Utah State, in over a decade. The starting quarterback for Utah State was at Utah. He started for most of the season last year for the Utes. So they were amped. They came out, the Aggies came out ready to play. They punched Utah in the mouth. And I think Utah, not having Rising, going in with a true freshman, getting his first start, and I think they just kind of felt they could show up because they were the P4 program against a Mountain West team and a team that they've beaten, 14 of the last 15 meetings. And so I think they kind of sleepwalked a little bit. And Utah State, give them credit. They came to play. As I said, they punched Utah in the mouth, went up, I think it was 14-3 to kind of start the game. Everything was just going their way. Once Utah kind of was able to get settled down, especially their true freshman quarterback in Isaac Wilson, once he kind of settled down, made a couple plays, then they started getting that thing rolling. But to credit Utah State, they came ready to play. They got embarrassed by USC the week before. They were a completely different team against the Utes, and they showed up.
Well, on that note here, is this Utah team living up to expectations so far? I mean, I know Rising being injured in the Utah State game is, but be able to come back this week against Oklahoma State, maybe not missing a beat at all and on track, or maybe it could have been seen as a little bit of a letdown in the last game on the defensive side or something. I'm just kind of curious what you guys think of your team thus far.
Yeah, it's so hard to get a feel on this team right now. In three games, Cam Rising has not played a full game yet. In their first game, they pulled him in the second quarter because they were just up so much. Playing an FCS school in southern Utah. The game was completely out of hand, out of reach in the second quarter, so they already pulled Cam by then. And then the injury in the Baylor game was a couple minutes before halftime, so we haven't even seen this whole offense in a full game yet. I think there's still a lot of question marks. Just because there is a lot of talent out there, pegged to be the team to win this conference, we just haven't even seen them this year. And honestly, in the game we thought in Baylor, it just didn't go that way because Cam got injured. And then after Cam got injured, as I said, that whole energy just left the stadium, left the team. They still won, but it was just a different team after Cam went out. So this week, against Oklahoma State, it's going to be interesting to kind of see, are we going to see a Utah starting offense complete the whole game?
Yeah, one would think you would be able to. Defensively, though, I would say this. Oklahoma State, so far, our offense has looked pretty darn good. Our defense has given up a lot of big plays. But I'm curious for you guys defensively, do you think you're going to play stacking the box, really worry about a run game, even though our run game has not been anything to write home about thus far this season? Or do you think you're going to play more of a conventional defense and try to basically make Bowman beat you through the air?
Yeah, so I think the Utah defense really focuses on the run primarily. They like to kind of stack the box on their outside, on their corners, on their safeties. You're going to get a lot of one-on-one matchups, uh, just because Utah likes to keep everything at the line of scrimmage. Really, stop the run. Essentially, it is the Utah defense. They live. They love living in the backfield. So against anyone, and especially like a team like Oklahoma State with with Ollie back there, I think Utah's going to focus on him, and rightfully so. And I think that kind of what Utah likes to do already is attack that run game. You're going to see a lot of man-to-man single coverage in the passing game.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, then on the opposite side of it here, what from our defense do you think you'll be able to exploit most on offense? What are you guys best at offensively overall?
So right now this season, what we have seen is Utah's been living on that big play. The big plays in they have running back Dejon Stanley, super fast, not so much as a ball runner, but they use him out of the backfield, kind of leak him out as an extra receiver. They wheel routes are his specialty, and I think that's where they want to attack most defenses. And looking at Oklahoma State, it seems like the past 2 years, maybe their defense has kind of given up quite a few points, and their offense, and you would know way more than me, but it seems like their offense has really been that strength of the team. And so I think that's where Utah may try to use that speed they have on the outside, make big plays. Then that's really what we've seen so far from Utah this season when that offense has been in the game.
Yeah, you just touched on it, but I think that's probably going to be the way that we got to beat you guys, is outscoring you. I don't think our defense is good enough to stop you overall. And with that being said, I don't love our odds in doing that, just because that's never really a true way to win games when you have to outscore somebody. It doesn't give you a lot of confidence or a lot of like, oh, you know what, like we'll be good, watch out type of deal, because it just is going to be. It's just not a great place to be if you're like, hey, we'll outscore you, especially when it's Utah's defense that I'm worried about a little bit. Definitely if we can stop the run, that shuts down a whole part of our game, and I do think that's why our offense hasn't looked good offensively on the run game side of it. Excuse me. In basically the whole year. We average like 112, 113 yards a game rushing, but we're over 300 yards a game passing. The Arkansas game is a weird anomaly just overall. We lost that total yardage wise to Arkansas by like 200 yards or close to it.
Oh, dang.
So I'm really curious how we're going to play there. But basically since Jim Knowles, who's now the Ohio State defensive coordinator, since he left for Ohio State, our defense has been under different identities. And I think we have really good players, but I was really hoping we have Colin Oliver healthy this part of the season. Our guy who's All-American, who's now ruled out for some time, definitely out for this game, probably out for the next game as well too, if not even longer. And that was the way I thought we could maybe get to Utah a little bit, is getting to Cam Rising, just getting some sacks, getting some bigger plays on defense, because I don't think our defense really forces that many 3 and outs. Arkansas, the whole first half, they got to 3 and 10, 3 and 5, 3 and whatever, and they would convert every time it seemed, or fourth downs they convert either way. Is there a good way to beat this Utah team? I know you guys won. There's a good reason why you're also top 15 team in the nation. There's another good reason why you're ranked ahead of us, I'm sure, as well too. But is there some type of blueprint or some type of thing you go, hey, this is our biggest weakness that other teams can exploit right now?
Yeah. So I think definitely the offensive line has not played great this season. And we kind of see that with Utah every year. It seems like their offensive line, it takes some 7-8 games to really come together and be a good offensive line. The last couple of seasons, it seems like the beginning of the season and up to the middle, it's always kind of been their downfall, is their offensive line. I think that's where probably their biggest weakness. on offense is going to be that line. If teams can attack that, kind of overload it, really shut down that run game, I think that's where Utah gets really uncomfortable. And we saw that in the Utah State game. I mean, Utah State was living in the backfield, just eating up that offensive line in the first quarter, and it made the offense very slow, and just they couldn't do anything.
Well, what do you think is a good way for you guys to win? I mean, I know we talked about the running game already, Cam Rising. What's the blueprint for you guys to go, hey, we feel really confident about this one aspect of our game right now?
Oh, that's a head scratcher right now. It probably is going to be the front seven on defense. That's always Utah's strength. As I mentioned, with Kyle Winningham being a defensive-minded coach, they always kind of put the best players on defense, and that was kind of always the joke. Now that we're 20 years as Kyle is the head coach, is anytime they recruit an athlete, they put him on defense. They don't put him on offense. And it really wasn't until about 2 or 3 years ago that we actually started getting, significant talent on offense. It was always defense. But that front seven, that defensive line and linebackers definitely is the strength of that defense. That's why I said they want to attack that run game. They want to force teams to throw on them because they feel that's where they can get turnovers. They had 2 picks against Utah State, but it's hard when you're playing man coverage and you got one-on-ones. When you get a very talented quarterback that can just pick you apart, that's what worries me with Utah at times. They like to run a nickel to try to get another DB in there just because they're so run heavy. But sometimes it can kind of bite them in the butt. I think last year against Oregon State, they just got ran off the field. DJU, who's not doing much at Florida State this year, but last year when he's at Oregon State, he ran Utah right off that field, just quick passes out to his receivers, and Utah going to hang with them.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, a couple more questions for you here. But one thing I just want to throw in as well, at some point I had to say it. Cam Rising and I have some similar things in common here. One, we're both about the same height, 6'2". But second thing, we both were born in the same city in California, which is just kind of interests me overall. In Ventura, California. Cam Rising seems like one of those guys where I think 2 years ago I would have gone, hey, who knows, NFL draft pick, like could be tops, or whatever. Could be in the conversation for first quarterback selected, but it's so like 2022 me kind of talking, right? This is kind of the, hey, you know what, we lost to Penn State, but on a January 2nd game, right? Like it's a big time deal. We've, won the Pac-12, etc. We lost in the Rose Bowl by a score, so be it. What did you think of Cam Rising when he got to campus at Utah? Has this guy been like a heralded prospect for quite some time, or has it really just been kind of one of the Kyle Whittingham projects? Yeah. Not sure, maybe I cut out there a little, Cameron, but yeah, I'm just curious what you kind of think about Cam Rising since he started.
Yeah. So you got to remember, Cam's 25, right? So you got to go way back. The thing when he first came. So as I mentioned, he came from Texas. So obviously, right off the bat, Utah fans were already in love because it was, a quarterback that was coming from, a blue chip program in Texas. Kind of just thinking of Cam over the years, he's just a fan favorite. He's got his own theme music, it's Bad Moon Rising, that they play whenever he runs out on the field. It's interesting because I kind of thought the same thing years ago, that he had a shot at the NFL. Watching him, especially his first year he was at Utah and had to sit out, we're able to see some practices and so we're able to see him throw. and he looked good. This is the future right here. I think with injuries that's really hampered him. And I think one reason why he has stayed as long as he has is because of NIL. I mean, he's making more money with NIL than if he was able to get on a scout team in the NFL. I don't really think high of him as an NFL prospect, and I'm not some quarterback NFL draft guru. I'm not trying to act like I am. Just things I'm reading, trying to learn this team more, what national guys are saying. I kind of feel that he would kind of go as a free agent right now, maybe very late draft pick. It is what it is. Not taking anything away from him. He's still, QB1 here. I think Utah fans would love to have him for another year. I think they've applied for another year for him because of that transfer year that he missed coming out of Texas. So who knows? We might have Cam for another 3 years. He might have 4 Masters by the time he's done playing at Utah.
That would be one heck of a thing to see. And I got to say, I think all of our chips are in this basket for Oklahoma State purposes for this season. Yeah, I mean, we've got Bowman's 7th year. Ollie Gordon is probably his last year, I would assume, just because he's got so much draft potential. And some other guys on the roster too, especially like our whole offensive line is, I mean, they're not 25, but they're close to it. They're 23 plus, I believe, on average here. I know Justin Kirkland, who's a famous Oklahoma State lineman, but he's also from Utah, so you're looking forward to the game. But with that being said, I would have asked him one more question today in the press conference stuff that I do not know the answer to. So I'm going to ask you instead, what is a Ute? Well, the Utah Utes, what's the mascot?
So it's named after the Ute Indian tribe. So it's an Indian tribe that, was in Utah, and that's where the state name Utah comes from, is from the Ute Indian tribe. It's really cool because once a year they come and do a halftime show in Rice-Eccles Stadium, and at the basketball games they'll do a halftime show, but they'll come out and do a drum circle, and they'll have their dancers going, and they're all in their traditional ceremonial dress. So it's really cool. Really trying to connect the university, the fans, with the Indian tribe that they use the name of. Their mascot is a red-tailed hawk. If we want to go that far, so with like the cheerleaders, it's a red-tailed hawk. But for their nickname, it's the Utes.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, cool. I'm learning new things about all the different conference members, except for Colorado, because they were already part of the Big 12 when I've been an Oklahoma State fan. Yeah. Now I will say basketball, looking forward to playing you guys this year. Other sports, of course, as well, too. Well, just because we're not supposed to be that good at basketball, so if you guys are also not supposed to be that good, we're looking forward to it. I think we might be both in the same kind of, we got a brand new head coach and brand new, most of the roster, if not the whole roster, is brand new. I mean, it's not completely brand new, but we're both on the same similar circumstances, I guess, let's say, in building Big 12 programs in basketball.
I will tell you this, the most, probably the exciting part about Utah's basketball season is this is the first year, I think in like 4 or 3 seasons, that they've actually used all their scholarships. So that's their winning. Their winning moment is they're using all their scholarships first time. So yeah, it's not pretty.
Well, yeah, but isn't Andrew Bogut a former Ute?
Yeah. No, it's crazy. Utah was a basketball school when I was growing up. It was all Utah Utes basketball. Andre Miller, Keith Van Horn, all these guys playing in the NBA. It was all Utah basketball, and really it was hard to get basketball tickets. It was really easy to get football tickets. Honestly, they started letting people in at halftime for free at football games just because it was so empty. And then Urban Meyer came here. And that really switched everything. That's when Utah really became, a football school. Right now, I think there are over 85 consecutive sellouts in Rice Eccles Stadium. So it's definitely a football team or football school right now. But yeah, a Final Four appearance in the 90s. Yeah, as you said, Andrew Bogut, number 1 draft pick overall. It's crazy. It's crazy to think in my youth just how everything was Utah basketball and now everything's Utah football.
Yeah, no, I would say it's very similar for Oklahoma State as far as when the head coach changed, when it became Eddie Sutton was 1-04. He won the Big 12 championship for Oklahoma State basketball. And then since then, it's been rocky. There's been some bright moments. There's definitely a, number 1 overall draft pick and Cade Cunningham in 2020. There's 2016 Marcus Smart, top, he's a 6th overall pick to the Celtics. There's some other guys, Tony Allen, of course, through the program as well, too, the Graham brothers. But really, once Gundy kind of got on the field and made his presence known and, beat OU, definitely in 2011 is really when it switched completely over, right, to everyone. So there's been a huge football fan since then, winning the Big 12, decimating OU in a game. But granted, Gundy's won 4 against OU now, so hang my hat on that one here as an Oklahoma State fan. Sounds like we won't play OU for quite some time here going forward. But do you have any questions for me here about Oklahoma State or any questions about Boone Pickens Stadium or anything like that as well?
Yeah, really, what's like the game, if I can think right, the game day atmosphere there?
Yeah, I'd say I don't think of Oklahoma State as a party school, but it's definitely like a tailgating school for sure. I mean, Thursdays at 5 p.m., everyone's trying to, pick their spot out on campus to put out the big, huge kind of 8x8 tents over stuff, mark their spot, fence off an area. And then it's a pretty darn cool thing that I think Oklahoma State does. I'm curious what Utah does kind of on the opposite side of it, but walking over the stadium, the whole team stays in the hotel on campus the night before, and they walk like, I don't even know if it's a quarter of a mile, maybe even less, maybe a 10th of a mile or something. They walk from the hotel to the stadium. And so there's a walk, Gundy, all the players are all either suited up or all in the same exact practice gear or whatever. Walk on over, kind of escorted by police, but just walking, of course. It's a really cool thing. And then just a bunch of fan activities, festive stuff going on before the game. Seems like every single college within the university has something going on too, whether it be handing out shirts or food or drinks or whatever it may be. And then on the north side of campus, there's a huge, basically right south of the practice field, there's a huge area where, a bunch of younger fans can play on inflatables, get their faces painted, all that good type of stuff too. So it's a huge atmosphere. And,
dang.
Gundy said earlier today in his press conference, he said he thinks one of the reasons the whole season sold out for Oklahoma State football season tickets is because of this Utah game. This one was the kind of one where you go, well, if I got to buy this one, I've got to buy this one to get season tickets. I don't want to wait for single game tickets to go on sale. Then I'm just going to go buy season tickets. And to me, it's very interesting because we don't host OU this year. And we've kind of made it a point as like Oklahoma State fans to go, we don't need OU. Like we'll bring in this many people
Exactly.
for every single game, no matter what. And homecoming is like our biggest game of the year football wise, but we generally played against a team that we're favored to beat preseason, which this year it's ASU we're playing, and who knows? ASU's looking all right so far. But with that being said, it's a huge game day atmosphere. The whole town of Stillwater, Oklahoma, I'm not sure how it is for Utah, but like it's a town of 20-ish thousand people when school's not in session. And then overnight, once, middle of August hit and school's in session, it's a town of 50,000 people and could even support a Target, but it's instead got 3 Walmarts. So it's definitely a college town. It's halfway between Tulsa and Oklahoma City as far as driving time wise, about an hour each way. And it's that's on airport, the whole deal. But it's definitely a college-esque and very college atmosphere, especially compared to our Bedlam foes in the South who live like 20 minutes away from Oklahoma City and are definitely more of the, their closer proximity to a bigger city definitely makes just a different atmosphere going to games at OU versus OSU as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. Yeah, I think Utah's, going to be opposite of that, right? I mean, the campus, the stadium, it's only 10 minutes away from downtown Salt Lake City. Utah, similar in the fact that it's a big tailgate scene. for football games. And that's kind of interesting because as Utah fans, we don't know a lot about the Big 12. Teams like Oklahoma State, as far as I know, there's no history between these two programs, and that's what's getting exciting for me as a college football fan. Is yes, with conference realignment, we've lost kind of that regionality rivalries. But when Utah was in the Pac-12, we started developing rivalries with teams you wouldn't expect. Utah and ASU, there's some bad blood there. So it's going to be interesting and it's going to be fun. Playing a team like Oklahoma State. I know Utah fans have had this game circled. Not only is it because it is the very first Pac-12 conference game for them, right? Because the Baylor game didn't count for conference. I think Utah fans perceive Oklahoma State as one of the top teams in this conference. When Utah got brought into the conference, that was standing out to all Utah fans. Is we get to play Oklahoma State, So I think this is gonna be a good one. Maybe a rivalry kind of starts this weekend, but it's definitely, as a Utah fan going against Oklahoma State, this is one that I think Utah fans going to the Big 12, they circled.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think it's the same for us as well. I think last year when it was like, hey, what's the schedule going to look like next year with Utah joining the conference, with Arizona joining, Colorado with Deion Sanders as the head coach, who knows what recruits and transfers she'll bring in. And now through a couple of games, I think a couple of those worries have basically been limited, but not the game against Utah. That one still is definitely front and center here, and we're excited for this weekend's game here. I did look it up before I started recording, and Oklahoma State and Utah have played once before. It's during the year of 1945, the year we won our national championship, which was later deemed our national championship. I won't go into that too much. There's not honestly ton that I researched.
Cam Rising's freshman year.
Oh, yeah. Alan Bowman's as well, maybe? I think that's...
Oh, yeah. Aren't they the two...
One big deal. Yeah, is that
aren't they the two oldest?
Yeah, I'm sure ESPN or I think this game's on Fox. I'm sure Fox will only talk about both that being 2 7-year quarterbacks against each other.
That's going to be their number one.
We'll only talk about it once for like 10 seconds. I'm sure. I'm kidding, of course. All right. Well, Cameron, thanks so much for joining here. I want to get a score prediction from you here before we go ahead and end out this part of the podcast.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close game. Honestly, I think. Last I saw, Oklahoma State is the favorite right now. I think it's going to be close. I'm a homer, so I got to go with the Utes. I think it's going to come down to a field goal, though. I've got 24-21.
All right. Well, that's a little bit less scoring than I have personally, but I have it by a touchdown, but that's not currently the line. But I do have barely the over here. I just think it'll be a little more scoring than I'm comfortable with, of course. But I think it's going to be 35-28 Oklahoma State. So, I no matter what, it'll be a really, really good game here. 3 o'clock Central. Forget Utah is not on Arizona time, but anyways,
we're Mountain, so it'll be 2 o'clock here.
Yeah, 2 p.m. So if you're not tuning in, make sure to do so. Thanks so much, Cameron, for joining here, and follow at Utah Man on X or Twitter. And make sure you go and follow his podcast as well, as we record a segment as well too that I'm a guest on. And follow at the CGA Tour on Twitter, Instagram. Send us some questions here for the next episode of the podcast, and then stay tuned here for the second segment here where I have Patrick McDermott on, a good college football fan, or a great college football fan, and a non-biased Big 12 fan. He's a fan of a different conference, so it's a different insight as well. So thanks again, Cameron, and we'll catch you guys again soon.